What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to the Chariot Friends. Justin here, and how you feeling? It's that time. The moon's in Scorpio, and this is I got some thoughts on this one for this video because this is where the time when the luminary, the lovely moon, is in her sign of fall, and sometimes with the when you have like a celestial body in its fall, that it can fall into some traps. Some of its lower expressions. It can feel imprisoned. In this sign here. So we'll talk about all that energy here in a moment. But before we get into that, if you're new here, again, my name is Justin, and know that when you're coming across this video, you're in sync with the moon, and who doesn't love that? But this is also a place for you if you happen to have Cancer in your place. Let's see if I can spit that out. Sun, moon, rising, maybe Mars, wherever. This one's for you. But we all have moon placements. We all have that moon rules a Cancer placement. So it's good to just have eyes on the moon, work with the moon, so anyone can benefit from this. And I do tarot card spreads, amongst other things. Based out that lovely luminary, the good old moon. She's out and about. Go catch her if you can. And I will talk about what sign it's in, what phase it's in, and when it's going void, of course, just all them lunar shenanigans. And just so you're all aware, this is a general reading, not a one-to-one. So take what fits into your story, discard the rest, and everything will be dope. Now, let's jump into it. Because, yeah, this is an interesting moon that we're in. But when I was looking at the chart, I was just like, no fighting. Because there could potentially be some strong emotions that come with the moon in Scorpio. Let's get into this thing. Let's get into the lunar shenanigans. Now, depending on when you're watching this, happy Venus Day. Hope you're all doing well. And the moon is going to enter into Scorpio. This is going to happen on the 6th of June at about 7:23 p.m., and that's going to be Pacific time. And the moon is in a waxing gibbous phase. And now we're right over the full moon is around the corner. And where I think that we're going to have a really lovely full moon with where everything's at kind of astrologically. There's still, I think, there's still some build up to that, and this may end those building of feelings because Jupiter's going to be entering into Cancer here soon, and so we're getting into some real fresh long-term energy here. So who knows what this may look like for you. And this is wherever you have Scorpio, see what themes tend to come up around the time that the moon is here, because let's talk about this energy a little bit. The Scorpio is ruled by Mars traditionally, and they are the fixed water sign. They're receptive or yin in nature. And the very interesting thing about Scorpio is that they do, I think, hold their emotions very well. They're one of the few signs that really, like, it's kind of hard to feel out Scorpio energy sometimes. They could put up a really strong wall. You have to really kind of get to know them, establish that safety, that intimacy, in order for them to really show you their feelings. Because I honestly think that Scorpios are some of the coolest people that I know. Like they're some dope water signs, and I think with Scorpio being the fixed water, it's very different from Cancer or Pisces because they hold their water with them, and that water accumulates. And I think that Scorpio really has a capacity to they feel strongly in a way, and I think there's a lot of power in their emotions. That Scorpio energy can be really inspired. I think I think that a lot of the time it's just like that Scorpio gets just intensity, but I think that Scorpio can feel really inspired. I've seen some people who have, like, let's say for example, like Venus in Scorpio. Even though Venus is in her detriment, I've seen some really great creatives. And just really unique art. I'm thinking of two people in particular. Just really great. They're very passionate about what they do here. And I think that this is a time to kind of go deep and explore different sides of yourself, develop a different intimacy, maybe especially again because every time the moon comes through this house, and especially if it forms any kind of aspects, if you have any sort of like fixed placements, especially those may be some tenser times, or water placements might flow a little bit easier there. But I would explore what kind of feelings come up around these things. Are there some things that you've maybe put your guard up around, and that maybe might be running you from underneath the surface? I think that's why when you think of a planet in its fall with the moon here, emotions are tricky sometimes. And I think that we have to feel things in order to heal them. And I'm not saying you just like go for a deep dive, like approach these things as they make sense. But I do think that this would be a time to check for, because again, Scorpio stores their water. So I would check at anything where we've been holding on to a lot of emotions and where we're needing to move the energy. And how we can move that energy, where we can channel that into, because that's where I think, again, the real power comes from Scorpios, that they can take these emotions and if they can find something to focus it into, really amazing things can happen. But let's go ahead and get into the lunar astrology a little bit. Not too many aspects that the moon is going to be forming, but straight off the bat, though, it's going to be forming an opposition with Venus here. Venus is not even 3 minutes into Taurus and the moon's already stirring up some trouble. But this would be, an opposition can be things out, people, situations outside of you that are needing you to make a situation, or, that are maybe getting in the way, or maybe I don't want to say getting in the way, but where there could be some tension there, where you're needing to make some sort of decision. And this would be a time where I wouldn't necessarily initiate something if there's, let's say, something in like relationships, for example. I'm just looking at this house, right, or this chart right here. If there's something between like yourself in a relationship, being that Venus just entered here, I would say just kind of sit with, meditate on how we're feeling about this thing before we're going off on something. Really kind of, find a way to articulate these feelings as opposed to maybe having, let's say, someone's just kind of been pissing you off and just having some sort of react response, because then what'll end up happening is that this thing with having in fixed energy can go on a lot longer than it really needs to. So I would just kind of be just like a little bit aware of that. But that again doesn't mean that we're bottling things up, because that is another thing I would pay attention to, because eventually the moon is going to form a square with Mars, which is the ruler of this moon. And so if there are any things that you may be keeping bottled up, that you've been maybe just kind of dismissing, it's not a big deal, but and then, again, then all it takes is one little small thing, and then a whole bunch of accumulated things are coming down on one situation, and it's not, then there's confusion, because it's just like, well, what are we talking about here? So that would be something where, take some time, again, think about if you have any kind of feelings over these next couple of days that you're needing to deal with, and figuring out some kind of constructive ways to take some action once that maybe that moon gets to Mars there. But again, pay attention to, again, where you have like maybe a lot of fixed placements, a lot of maybe water placements, and even some earth placements. I'm talking, we're talking, of course, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. So those are going to be the sort of like chart or sort of energies that I would look out for. But otherwise, this is a pretty light one. This may be one where we're kind of keeping more to ourselves. Time not to really do too much. To just kind of chill, just to get ourselves maybe pumped up for maybe what this full moon energy is going to have to bring. Because I think that that's going to be something really exciting, bring something to look forward to as we get ready to get into the new moon in Cancer, which is going to have that Jupiter energy in there. So it's going to be lovely. I'm really hyping it up. But we'll talk about that more in the next one. Well, let's go ahead and get into the tarot. And actually, I'm going to start with this one here, getting ahead of myself. But a couple of things here. These readings that I do, they're not gender-specific readings, so apply these energies to people as they make sense for your situations. And with this spread, I'm going to be pulling 6 cards. And normally I would get a clarifier for any changing lines that we would have, but there are no changing lines today. So things are pretty locked in. That's very appropriate for this fixed energy here. But I'm just going to go ahead and pull 6 cards, and we're just going to kind of get a general energy that's coming through. But let's get a sense of this thing. We'll start off with an oracle card and then kind of go from there. So, all right. Coming right off the bat here. All right, so you have the frog spirit, which talks about clear out the clutter. And that might be a really nice thing with this moon in Scorpio. Kind of, again, look at the things maybe that you've been holding that are ready to be cleared out. Maybe things that are taking up space. Because again, I think this full moon is going to be like taking a drink of fresh water. You've been on a long adventure. You've been maybe on a, imagine, if you've ever been on like a long run, if you had a really good workout, and then that first sort of like you finish up, you take that first, real sip of rested water. Like, okay, I'm done with this thing for today. That's the kind of energy that this is giving me. A very kind of like allowing some, because I think again the only reason that Scorpio energy I've with how I've experienced it, is when it's intense, is when it's holding on to something, when that water isn't moved. I remember talking with someone once who had like stellium in Scorpio in the 12th house. And yeah, there was a moment, I've mentioned this story before, there was a moment where we were talking about something and I could literally feel the energy coming off of them. And at one point, I have some times where just like all my, I imagine it's just like how a cat feels, because I have a lot of Leo placements. And it's like I could feel the hairs rising up on my arms. I'm like, we got to get outside. This is doing a lot. And that might be something too, where, and I'm just even thinking about the advice from your hexagram, this may be a great time to even just like get out, to find yourself some spaces to feel through some things, because emotions can be a lot. They can get you in a raw place. And so again, allow yourself, while you're doing this decluttering, give yourself space and show yourself compassion too. That's always a big thing as you're feeling through this, that this isn't, those moments where we're feeling vulnerable isn't a time of weakness, and they deserve the same amount of love as every other aspect of us as well. But I'm this frog spirit is almost like the way it's posed. It's like it's waiting in anticipation for something, and I think that I'm getting a couple of things with this. One, I'm getting an energy of like, it's almost like you anticipating someone is going to, to stir up some things, like it's just like, man, if they just do this thing one more time, if they do this thing one more time, like again, like a predator, like some sort of animal getting ready to attack. And it's just like, be mindful about that, because if you keep calling that energy, then it will come, especially with fixed energy. Scorpios can pull, so that's something I would be mindful of. But I also think too that this is not a thing that we're forcing. Now this is not, again, this is not like I say you just like go and just like poke every like, what trauma do I want to deal with today? It's not anything like that. It's more so just like, just pay attention to what comes up and feel just how it comes up. Just allow the space for it. You don't even have to, necessarily like have a solution for it. Just feel through it. And then you'll probably get more clarity once we get into that Sag energy, that full moon, what to really, like, where to go from here, how to utilize that there. So, because I think that I really think that with Scorpio, that they're more than just like intense, just intense feelers. It's just like people who say that just cancers are just emotional, and I mean, where there's truth in both. But there are other things that the water signs are doing when we're not in our feelings. So, and I think that there's just, again, Scorpios are cool. They get a really loving energy. I think a very friendly one loyal energy. I think that's something too. So, but let's go ahead and get into some tarot. Let's get some more cards on this and see what's going on. Like I said, no fighting. You got the Princess of Swords here. And the reason I say that, I mean, look at her background. It's a lot going on there. There's a pretty tumultuous scene that's happening here. And this is where we're talking about the mind. The princesses are earth, represent earth, and then the swords represent air. So this is our thoughts and things manifesting. So again, I would take this time, especially with that frog spirit, see where your head's at. What are we thinking about the emotions that are coming up? What are some rational ways that we can deal with this stuff here? That, and then maybe having some ways to get some sort of objective view. And this doesn't objective view. And this doesn't have to just be about talking this out with someone, which I mean could be very helpful with the Princess of Swords. Again, learning how to articulate maybe what we're feeling. But this could be even just like writing this stuff out. Maybe this could be like your maybe playing playing an instrument, maybe you're going to work out, finding different ways to just help that energy move, especially when it's feeling flustered, when it's feeling frustrated. But I also think the Princess of Swords too is a curious one, one that is, get curious about maybe why certain feelings come up. When you think about maybe certain things, what is that about, where. And again, just as it makes sense, because I think that that Scorpio energy too is they're like the detectives. They can sense things that are moving underneath the currents. This is where we are very receptive. Like maybe almost, again, like maybe a little too much. But we can utilize that if we can learn to hone that intuition. I know a few people who have their moon in Scorpio, and they honestly, they welcome the intensity. The more the more intimate, the better. The rawer, the better. So, but I think that, yeah, this is allow yourself, again, I think, to kind of explore your thoughts maybe around something, or maybe around a certain relationship, or however that's coming up for you. But something, I think, to just kind of clear the mind out a little bit. This could even just be finding just some, I'm just getting just like general activities, maybe something to get you out of your feelings, out of your head, however that may be kind of translating for you here. But let's get some more on this. Oh, a lot of people. You got the Knight of Wands here, which is the King of Wands in like the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But the Knight of Wands is very quick to act, as you see here. I mean, he's got this cape that's fire. He's holding the Ace of Wands. His horse can barely contain itself. The Knight of Wands is ready to move. But I think that it's more than just like anger and heat and responsive here. I think that there's something passionate about the Knight of Wands. The Knight of Wands is just pure fire. Just that knights represent fire, the wands represent fire. So this could be, again, clearing out some clutter so that you can make some space for some new energy, some new fresh things, something revitalizing to come through here for that. Even when I'm thinking about this too, the Knight of Wands is Sag. So that's, for me, he has Sag energy in his chart there. Moving fast and then having the strength to, yeah, to really kind of tackle any challenges that come their way there. But yeah, that's what I'm really kind of feeling with this, a need for maybe find a new area, especially if you find yourself like maybe reacting or responding to a situation the same old way, and then you end up not feeling great afterwards. It's like, how do we switch that up so we don't end up just like burning all this energy, so that there's not just like, there's this term that I remember hearing not too long ago, just like wasted emotions. And that to me is where it's like you go, if you feel these things, it's just intense for a minute, and then once it passes, you're just kind of like, it's like, kind of like how a child maybe throws a tantrum, and then you give them something, and then they're fine. But it's just like, well, why were you doing that? Because it's gonna happen again. That's the thing, and it's gonna be like a repeat. Kind of get into a cycle there. So I think there's just a little something to explore there in that. Now let's get to your next card. So you got the Moon card here. This is Pisces energy. And the Moon card can be a bit disorienting a little bit. Maybe as we're kind of feeling through this energy, it kind of takes you into a sort of nebulous space. Maybe you find yourself, because the thing too, maybe this is not energy that, if you do find yourself picking up on some things that, especially if it feels foreign, feels really kind of out of character, it might be because you're picking up on things around you. Because that's going to be something too when Jupiter moves into Cancer, and even when Mercury moves into Cancer, that is going to allow us to be more receptive, whether we're aware of it or not. So I think that this Moon card is really just kind of, again, you're really kind of paying attention to what's moving through you, especially whenever the Moon's going through a water sign, and having regular practices to clear your energy. whether that be some sort of like breath work, whether that's getting outside in nature for a little bit, you know, like just allowing something to you just to declutter daily if you can. You know, but and this could be just honestly something as simple as, you know, when you're going to take a shower or take a bath, just like imagine the water's just kind of really just kind of, you know, maybe even some light or something like that, just to kind of help you move through that. Maybe lighting a candle while you're doing it, maybe kind of really ritualizing it a bit more. But even the moon card, there's again, this can be, there's this confusion, maybe energy that might be coming through this time, but it can be a bit of a primal feeling, I think, with the moon, because you're again, you're sensing this is like, I think about the difference between like the moon and the high priestess, where the high priestess is more internal, the things that you keep secret within, which is very Scorpio. These are the things that people are feeling outside of you. You know, you're sensing the thing that's challenging your composure, possibly even. I'm just thinking about how in the Rider White there's like a dog that looks more kind of domesticated as opposed to this kind of wild wolf that's on the other side there. So yeah, just kind of pay attention to that. You know, maybe the energies that and how you may be giving off your energies. You know, how you're being received. That's interesting. Let's get another one. Speaking of Venus and Scorpio, so you got the Seven of Cups here. And you know, the Seven of Cups, even though this can be a card of debauch, I think that the reason that it can get a bit murky and get be where it can even seem a bit kind of toxic in the Seven of Cups here is when I think that the creative energies don't have anywhere to go, and when we're not expressing ourselves, and maybe when we haven't cleared out any of the clutter, then it shows up in kind of unsatisfactory ways, where we look to distractions for, you know, for that, look for like quick fixes and things like that to kind of to to stir up the things that we can just do naturally. You know what I mean? This is sometimes with this card, this is like my prelude to a devil moment. So that's just something I think just to kind of just always kind of keep eyes on there with this, with the Seven of Cups. But I also really think too that this is can be a very imaginative energy, where there may be a bit of illusions in the Seven of Cups. I think that that doesn't have to again be just like a negative thing. You can take this like moon with the Seven of Cups and really get into like an inspired place. You know, the Seven of Cups can almost be like a frenzied state sometimes. You know, when you're really feeling, you know, those feelings when you like when you're really just like you're just like on. You know, and like really on the things you just do is just effortless. Like you really just, when you had those days where you just really brought it, just Knight of Wands, just bam. You know, that's what that Seven of Cups I think could bring here. And you know, it brings options. You know, I think the Seven of Cups is looking at how we've been maybe in, you know, maybe choosing the things that we've been indulging in. Is like, is there another way of, because something is feeling something is feeling like clogged up or something, or even congested, you know, even. And this could be where, you know, if you've maybe even been feeling some sort of like creative block, maybe you've been feeling in a rut or something like that, been needing, you know, been looking for inspiration. For some reason, I'm just getting this thing of like, you know, if you happen to take one who happens to take a bath, for example, like maybe putting some rosemary, you know, of course, you know, if we check if you got like allergies and things, but working with like rosemary or like different herbs and things to kind of create a sort of steam, or maybe even just doing that where you're just putting your head over like a pot or something, maybe boiling some water or something where it's just like, and again, the energies are needing something cleansing there, something along those lines there. Or like aromatherapies or something like that is an energy that I'm getting here. But look at where maybe there's been, I think, just like distractions, possibly, you know, where we're, whatever that looks like for you. This could be watching. This could be binge watching a lot of shows, looking. But and that's even an interesting thing. Like the things that you go to escape into. What do you get? What do you take from them after you're done? How do you feel after that? Does it leave you feeling like you want to do something with that your imagination has just been filled, or again, was it some sort of like quick fix and it's just like kind of clogging up your imaginative space? So that Seven of Cups is given a lot. And I think it's just because, we all have a lot that we're working with. I think sometimes too, I'm even getting an energy here where, back to that Princess of Swords, even thinking about different ideas, maybe different ways of, expressing yourself. Maybe you always thought of yourself as doing just this one thing, but you're more than just like, I think it one trick pony just because of how prominent this horse is in the Knight of Wands here. But, we're more than just like, maybe than just your job, or even then more than just like one skill that you're good at. You can be good at a number of things, or at least become good at a number of things here. I think it's just all a matter of, with this combination here, just a matter of imagination, and how creative you can, be, how you can be. And I think that even that's just a muscle that we can work. So that's interesting. Let's get another one. All right, so you have the Seven of Wands here, which is actually where Mars is at right now. This is Mars in Leo here. And I think that this energy is giving this, like, having the courage to like face these, maybe like these kind of, it's like these kind of sort of trickier spaces of self, those ones that maybe you keep your guard up, possibly here, maybe where you cast some kind of illusion, maybe even that everything's okay, and it might just be as a protective measure, and that's totally fine, and that may be something that worked, before, but now I think that there's something here where something may be brought up again, and you're needing to be more on a bit of an offense, be a bit more, when I said we're being, when I was talking about being receptive first and then that being responding, because that's how I think when we're talking about the earth signs and the water signs being receptive, it's not that they don't do anything. But they do it in a different way. They receive the messages, with water signs, they're feeling, well, in instance, stick with water since we're on Scorpio, but it's like, when you're feeling something, feeling like there's this calling, this need to do something, then it's, responding with an action. But it's not like where with a fire sign you're just doing it, just like it's like, or a air sign. There's something here with that. But it's like there are going to be things that maybe kind of come up, that maybe kind of poke the bear a little bit, and you may need to be a bit more kind of on, a little bit on, to be ready for anything that may come up, and I don't think that it's going to catch you off guard, like in a way that you weren't anticipating, but it's very interesting with this Seven of Wands here. Or there's maybe even this thing here of maybe not dealing with it again, because maybe it makes you, like, it puts you in like a maybe kind of a helpless place, or maybe even feeling like it's weak. Maybe there's a lot of criticism behind, maybe a certain feeling there. So like, again, apply that to your situation there. But that's what the Seven of Wands is giving me. All right, let's get your last card here. Let's see what's going on with that. That's an interesting contrast. So you have the Nine of Wands here. And the Nine of Wands is giving me this, where the will is getting fortified, where with these things that are coming up, they're meant to strengthen you. It's not something that's meant to put you back on the defensive, where you feel, where you feel again like you can't do anything about this, because the Seven of Wands is taking this more initiative on the situation. And then it's like, once we've made that move, it's like the Nine of Wands is, okay, we've made this progress, now let's hold this place here. Let's try not to get to a place where we're taking one step forward and two steps back. That's what this thing is kind of giving me here. But again, I think that can only be dealt with when we kind of clear out the clutter, when we do these sort of regular check-ins and see how we're doing, how certain relationships are doing, how certain, how and then this is again just like sort of, I'm not talking about just like love relationships, or maybe relationships with home, with work, with your spirituality, with yourself, with your body, all those sort of things there. So yeah, very, very interesting. All right, but I think that's all I got for you on the tarot there. So let's go ahead and get some advice from the I-Ching here. And like I said, there was no change in line, so we're just going to take the hexagram as is. But this is hexagram 22, which is decoration, and this is mountain over fire there. And every time I think about that one, there's a bit of volcanic sort of thing that's coming up there. So again, I wouldn't let things build up. Volcanoes even happen just because there's a lot of pressure that's building up. And I think that this can be where you can get the energies moving before they just explode, before they just kind of like Knight of Wands. So just a little something to think about with that. That's something that usually pops up when I think about that hexagram. But the hexagram for this is sign of the sacrifice. Somewhat auspicious to go somewhere. And so like, if you're feeling a lot, maybe stay home if you have that possibility. But this is just like the sign of, if you've been, I think that if this is really just more so kind of on like to kind of break this metaphor down, if you've been taking steps to maybe clear out this space to deal with some things, that auspicious to go somewhere can maybe be like to take some steps to have a breakthrough. Okay, it's like, what, I've really kind of unpacked my feelings maybe around, let's say, home, for example, and now maybe I'm ready to approach my parents and have a conversation about maybe how I viewed us raising up and where I see our relationship going forward, as opposed to it being just like a blaming thing. Or maybe this could be where, but I think it's only time to take an action if we've, again, how we started with that Venus, kind of looking at, because like when we're thinking about oppositions, and we're going to talk about this with the full moon, I like to think of an opposition as like kind of like, one way is like an expectation versus reality, and then what do we do with those results? Because, maybe we thought one thing was going to happen, and then the environment or the person, again, responds in kind. So yeah, this to me, it's like, okay, let's just analyze this stuff first, put in the work, see how we wrap our heads around what the results we got, and then this could be a time to make some progress, but only once we've really kind of sat with some things. I think if we just sort of like go right off the bat, it could cause just like a little bit of trickiness there. But overall, I think that this moon in Scorpio, and let's go ahead and switch back over here. But overall, I think this moon in Scorpio can be a very constructive one. But again, I think it's only when we don't allow ourselves to move through those emotions that the moon feels a lot. And, I think that the moon here can also just like, I think what happens is that because the moon moves so fast, is that these feelings that maybe you'll move through while the moon's in Scorpio, if you have a number of things that you're not addressing, they'll all kind of bubble up at once. And then it's like really maybe one thing might exacerbate another thing. So this is like, let's try not to let that build up too much there. Again, it's like almost like where if you put a pot, a lid on a pot, eventually that pressure's going to get, something's got to give. So, let's not let that pressure build up. Let some of that heat out. Let some of that steam kind of get out of there. So, but those are some things that I would think about with this moon in Scorpio. And if this is something where you want to explore, Where do you have Scorpio in your chart? Where when the moon's around here, why do I feel these way around these certain themes? Because it can be very insightful when you think about that, where planets are in their fall and how what house theme is that for you versus when they're exalted and what that looks like for you. When the moon's going through my house, and this would be for all Leo risings, this would be going around the home space. So it's like, what's that looking like? And it doesn't have to, again, it doesn't have to always be bad, but it's just like, what is that looking like? It's one to get eyes on there. I got thoughts about it, but it's fine. we are dealing with it. But yeah, that could be something to, if you want to check that out, if you just want to understand your natal chart in general, see how the planets are moving through your chart, maybe see what perfection year you are in, or even just see what are some auspicious dates for you to work with that are coming up for you. Maybe you're planning a move. I'm actually getting ready to talk with someone about that later today. Maybe you're planning like a move, or maybe you're wanting to start a business, maybe you want to start a relationship, maybe you want to sign a contract. I got you. So definitely check that out. All my information's down in the description box below. And if you have any questions, feel free to email. My email's down there, so definitely feel free to email me. But also, if you want to see what's going on just in the transits, what's going on in the transits weekly, on my other channel, Alchemist 8, I do weekly videos that come out every Mercury day, and it's talking about just that, where the sun and the other planets are at, and how to work with those energies, and who would be feeling more of these, where there may be more tension if you have certain amount of planets like this Jupiter one, great for water energy, for Cancer. Oh yeah, right, thumbs up for Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. But it may be a little bit trickier for like Aries and Libra and Capricorn. So placements, but it's going to be it's Jupiter, so it's going to be abundance all the just maybe a little bit of work. But yeah, that's there for you. And I also do have these little series here where I'm talking about different celestial bodies in different signs and different houses, and I have all of those under different playlists for you. So even it's just my thoughts on them. So give you just to give you an idea of how I work with the astrology. So, but until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep raising that vibration through the roof, and I will catch you on the next one, Moon Day.